Our final presentation comes from the dynamic duo behind Macaranga Media, who are about to show us just how much impact that two passionate people can make. Though a small team, Macaranga is reinvigorating environmental journalism through storytelling and data, highlighting local stories and connecting them to broader global issues. They focus on the nation's most pressing environmental challenges, from biodiversity and conservation to climate change. They have a way of making serious environmental issues feel relatable, and they've earned some well-deserved recognition along the way. Their hope that Malaysian environmental journalism will become a real powerhouse for change. So without further ado, please give a warm welcome to the brains and hearts behind Macaranga, Siew Lyn and Yao Hua, as they present Sing the Forest and the Trees, How Macaranga Does Journalism.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Thanks for being here in joining us to listen about macaranga.org. So we are Malaysia's first and to date only environmental journalism website. Actually, before we say our names, I just realize that we have a few things in common with the presenters before that came with us. So like Shahira, we do public education and science communication. Peter, we speak up for environmental justice. And like Prof. Siti Zuraina, we also do research. Our work is exciting, it keeps us poor, and our spouses are also our funders. Fortunately, we haven't had to deal with our skeletons yet. Anyway, so we are both the brains and brawn behind Macaranga. I am Yao Hua. I was an insect ecologist, but I have switched careers and I've been doing environmental journalism for 11 years. She's my partner.
Yeah, my name is Siew Lyn, and I have been writing about the environment for 30 over years. My byline is SL Wong.
Right. So Macaranga is, we specialize on the environmental issues in Malaysia. So we only report about Malaysia, and with every story that we do, we simply ask, is this issue sustainable development? Is this environmental justice? Does this work for the country, for the people, in the long run? And we have looked at issues such as minerals, mining, rare earth, forest use, of course, marine, coral reefs, food security, you name it. And we specialize on in-depth reporting. So this is our 5th year, and that photo was actually the photo of us in 2019 when we started publishing stories on Macaranga. So there are a few things you can take away from that photo. The first is that journalism is quite a stressful job. You could see with the thinning hairline on my head. That was 5 years ago. And we are excited then, and we're still excited now, because when we started, it was more of an experiment for us. But since then, we have published many stories. We have won quite a few awards, and I think we have, safe to say, we have won the admiration and the hearts of conservationists, researchers, policymakers, and the rest. So when we started Macaranga, we really had, we saw a few issues, a few problems that we wanted to solve. The first was that in Malaysia at the time, the environmental journalism landscape really lacks in-depth, comprehensive reporting about the environment. Many of the reports in the mainstream media were really, I would say, superficial or event-based, one-off, and that's it. That's not to blame the mainstream media, because most of them did not have the resources or the incentives to actually develop an environmental beat. So we came out to want to solve that. Siew Lyn, tell us, how are we going to do it?
Yeah, there were 3 things that we decided we wanted to do. We wanted to be the go-to source for environmental news that is in-depth and evidence-based in Malaysia. The second thing we wanted to do was to build up again the environmental journalism landscape. And the third thing we wanted to do was to be a platform for both journalists as well as experts to write about environmental issues as well as solutions. So how did we do this? First of all, we obviously produce in-depth, evidence-based stories, which are very local. So we focus on Malaysian issues because we saw a very obvious gap there. What we do is we work with data And that comes in many forms, whether it's through interviews or whether it's scientific papers or policy papers, laws. We go through all of that to back our work. And as a result, we don't target the mass market. As Yao Hua said just now, we have a very specific market of people who work in policy, activists, scientists, students, other media, and so on and so forth. The second thing we do, obviously, is to train. We don't only do workshops, but we do what we think are more important, which are longer-term mentorships. So we help journalists, not just our own, but other newsrooms as well, develop capability and skills, as well as subject knowledge in very specific environmental issues. And the third thing we do is we pay writers to write for us, and we try to pay them well. We pay above market rates, we pay regional rates. And we have about 4 to 5 journalists already who say they want to specialize in environmental and climate journalism.
So just to demonstrate how we implement all the approaches that Siew Lyn has explained, we're going to show you, we're going to run you through, run through a story that, in fact, our most recent story. Let's try whether this works. Okay, so this is a story that we published last month called the Climate-Friendly Version in Terengganu. It's really a story based off a proposed project that wants to convert peat swamp forest in Terengganu into oil palm. Right? When we saw this project, I mean, the first thing that came into our mind was like, wow, we all know that peat swamp forests are one of the world's most effective and efficient stores of carbon. And it's this age where we're really trying hard to empower our climate action. Why is the country, the governments, really considering converting peat swamp forests? So we wanted to look at this. And so we dug up the environmental impact assessment report, and then we went into it. The story really looks at the climate impact, but as Siew Lyn has said, we do very in-depth reporting. So every environmental story happens in a locality. It involves people, the communities who are all stakeholders. So we address all of that in this story. So can the team scroll down a bit? Right, scroll. Okay, stop. Yeah, so every of our story will involve a place. So we try to bridge it from, it's a continuity, right? It's not a place in isolation or independent, fully independent. It must be a place across space and time. So in this case, it was Kampung Mak Jintan, about an hour's drive out of Kuala Terengganu. And it's next to this village where the peat swamp forest would be converted. So we have never heard of the place before. Very few people had, actually. But so we went there. We spent a few days there speaking with the locals, understanding the place. And then we want to give this impression, this knowledge of this place and their concerns to our readers. That's the local scale. And then we will tie that to the national scale in terms of climate action, and then the regional scale in terms of carbon storage, and then the international scale, also in terms of policy. So let's scroll down. Right, so, stop, thanks, stop, yeah. The locals have different concerns. They are not concerned about carbon in the ground. They're concerned about floods. They're concerned about fires, forest fires. And so we show that, right, and we tell the readers about that. Let's scroll down to the next image. Let's scroll down. Yeah, thanks for that. Scroll down vertically. Okay, stop. One thing that we do in Macaranga is that we always show maps to give people an idea of the place. Okay, we use satellite images. Okay, scroll down. Let's scroll down. Yeah. Go down. Yeah, continue down. So, these things don't happen in isolation. All the forests around it will be affected. Let's scroll down. Scroll down even more. Okay, stop. Go slower here. And we want to bring the science to the readers. We want to help them understand it, right? So very often we use graphics. Okay, we use graphics. If you can scroll down, the illustrations will play. Okay, so we use illustrations like this to show people how peatlands form and why is there so much carbon stored in it. All right, let's scroll all the way down. Whoever is interested, and I'm sure everyone here will be interested and will go read the story later. So let's scroll, scroll all the way down. Yep, scroll faster. Yeah, scroll, and then that's the regional one. We use a lot of data. If I keep doing this, you just keep scrolling. Yeah. All right, okay, let's keep scrolling. Yeah, let's keep scrolling. Okay, so forest fires and local concerns. Keep scrolling. I want to show you that, yeah, and then here, let's stop here. So another way of visualizing data or communicating data is that we want people to understand what it means for them in terms of carbon. So when we convert, if we do convert this peatland into oil palm, a lot of carbon will be released, but how much is that? We will say, oh, in a day's time, it will release enough carbon to fill up 5 KL towers, and in a year's time, 275 KL towers. Let's scroll all the way down. Let's scroll all the way down. Right. But we don't just tell people about the problem. We also tell them about the solution. So we speak to researchers, we speak to policymakers, and then we present the solutions. In this case, it's a solution where perhaps the state government will have to stop the project and then gazette it as a forest reserve to protect it, to generate carbon credits. But we don't just say that. We dug into the gazette data, and then to show our readers and to show everyone who's interested, like, hey, look, the Terengganu state government has de-gazetted so much forest reserve and not replaced it. So perhaps this is a good chance for them to replace it. Like, please scroll all the way down, like all the way down to the end. And so we don't just tell people about all these numbers. We also show them how the calculations is done. With the calculation explained. If we click that, then it actually shows how we do our calculations. So obviously, that's a lot of work, and it's a great story to have. However, it comes with a lot of challenges, right? It will take a lot of resources and money to produce such a story. And so one of our main challenge is money. Macaranga, since in the last 5 years, we do not do advertisement and we do not accept corporate funding. And so that leaves us with very few avenues of funding. Siew Lyn, how do we try to solve that?
Yeah, our main source of funds is actually grants. We get grants from media foundations, from embassies, from different parties. We also get fees from our training, and we have a small membership program of very, very passionate, loyal fans. And once we have the money, which we don't have yet, but once we have the money, we also struggle to find writers, which was surprising to us, right? We thought if we pay higher than market rates, we will get the writers, but we have been really struggling to get writers who are committed to write the type of stories that we want. And our solution? Yeah, so we train. We train as much as we can. We train not only our own writers, people whom we hope will write for us, but we want every single media to be able to write in-depth, analytical, evidence-based stories. We also try to pay as best as we can. We demand a lot from our writers, and so we think we should compensate them for the time and for working with ruthless bosses. And for those of you who are quick, you will notice that we actually publish directly the stakeholders, the shareholders of the company that we investigate, and so we name everyone. And that, of course, put us in a vulnerable and also risky position that we might get sued. That's always a concern. Are we able to address that? We try our very best to make sure that our stories are as watertight as possible, and that means that we have to be very, very careful with wording. Although we are a very, very small team, we actually follow through the process of good editorial practice. Right from the beginning, the editor works with the writer to determine the risks of writing a story that is controversial, through to the field reporting. There's always reporting coming back to and fro. We consult experts all the time, people who know the science, the people who know the laws, people who know the policies all the time. Very rigorous in the writing, in the editing, proofreading. We actually go through the whole process. We have had lawyers, sometimes more than one, look through our copy before we publish. So we're very, very careful with that sort of thing. We verify, verify, verify. And I think the most important thing for us is to make sure that everybody that we name and blame, or allegedly blame in our article, or somebody else blames and we report on it, is to give them the right of reply. And that's why we write to, if a government agency is named, we write to them. And it's not just send one email, okay, nobody replied, forget about it. No, we follow up. with a phone call, we are best friends with the secretaries, we chase emails 2, 3 times, and then we can say we didn't get a response from the person. But it means that we tried our darnest to give the right of reply to everybody. If someone's not happy with our story, and we have done it before, we publish a response in full without editing.
And despite all that hard work, all that investment on our side, very often we realize that once we publish our stories, it doesn't get read too much. Our stories are long and very in-depth, and perhaps naturally very few people will read it, but it's a real heartache. How do we try to solve that?
So we try to do as much outreach as possible. We do a lot of media literacy, awareness. We give a lot of talks. We're very good friends. We're very grateful to BFM Radio, who sort of feature us twice a month. We do a monthly environmental news wrap-up once a month. And we also go on to talk about our stories with our interviewees. It's not just us shock sendiri kind of thing, like being very proud of ourselves, but really try and push the conversation further. We're also on social media. We give a lot of talks. And we also try to translate where there's funding into Bahasa Malaysia and into Mandarin, again, to just broaden the reach.
So, don't be too discouraged by what we have presented, because our stories have had real impact. Just to name a few, one of our stories, actually a few of our stories have, we have exposed wrongdoings, gaps and flaws in the policies, and that have actually prompted the government regulators to start their own internal investigation, and that has led to the halting of the cease work order on a few projects, even helmed by very powerful figures in the country. And here in this photo, it's Orang Asli community in Pahang. It was through our reporting and our story that they were alerted that the developer were allegedly using their signatures in a fraudulent way. And so our story alerted them to that. They protested, and then they connected with lawyers who are now fighting the case for them in the Kuantan High Court. The same story has led an international conservation organization to cut their ties with a long-term Thai conglomerate sponsor because of greenwashing practices here in Malaysia. Other impact that we have had is that people come to us and tell us that they have used our stories, our references, our data, our analysis in forming their policies, the National Biodiversity Policy, for example. Our colleagues in other newsrooms frequently use our work as references, and it's also we are proud to hear that some university lecturers and NGOs that will use our content to teach their students and their staff. So these are all real impact that we are very proud of.
So going forward, what would we like to do? We'd like to just continue doing what we're doing, but we'd like to produce more stories. We'd like to grow our team. We'd like to do more outreach. And we want to continue training and mentoring in order to develop the very specific skills and knowledge that's needed to do solid environmental reporting. So what can you do? What can we all do? What can everyone do? Funding, of course, is the big thing. I think it would be marvelous if there was some sort of community chest for environmental journalism, not just for us, but for all the newsrooms in Malaysia. I think that would be very, very useful. Also, be engaged. If there's an issue in your backyard, that longkang, that drain is always flooding, right? I can't get municipal to do anything about it. Engage with your media. We have very, very hyper-local sections in our news media. Send them a note. Be engaged. I think that's what would be lovely. And I think ultimately what we believe in is that journalism is a force for good. We believe that journalism can effect change for the better. We believe that journalism can hold those who are in power accountable. There's been a lot of talk yesterday and today about having to work together, the importance of doing that, of engaging different stakeholders, of talking to people from all sides. That's what we try to do in our work. I think all of society, it would be great, can work for all of society to tackle the biggest problems that we have, and that's pollution, that's biodiversity degradation, and that's the climate crisis. Thank you very much.